essentially, resets, these sort of resets that we're talking about, essentially, these are technologically driven. And this is, if you go back to machine guns and the creation of Gatling guns and the creation of machine gun technology, the creation at the same time of biowarfare technology and other technologies like submarine technology, early flight Zeppelin technology. Well, that reset we call the World War One. And afterwards, you got the Treaty of Versailles, which wrote down the rules of the New World Order. And from that point on, a New World Order started to develop. And then by the 1930s, that attempt to develop it had obviously caused issue. But there was another technological issue coming. Einstein had already predicted the cracking of the atom and that would cause a massive amount of explosion. And seeing as they were all looking for bombs for the next big war, seeing as they knew that they could still dominate in this world where machine guns and World War One was a big eye-opener to a lot of these guys. They realize it doesn't matter. They can kill as many people as they can. And warfare allows them to test things on people. And so by the time it got to World War II, well, that was really not only the advances in other weapons technology, but really it was the race to the nuke. Because they knew, they'd already posited after that, the technology, that technological shift would change the paradigm of society and there'd have to be a reset. 1945 to 1947, you see the creation of nearly every single world organization that currently exists and we say has control right now, including the CIA. We see the creation of the State of Israel, the current state of play. By the 1960s, they had already said, okay, the next stage we're going into, because on thermonuclear war had been written in 1961, which posited, like I say, Herman Kahn saying mutually assured destruction. For people who don't understand what that means, it meant that if everybody fired big bombs at each other, everybody dies, so people won't do that. Instead, what they'll do is they'll enact other mechanisms underneath that are basically different forms of espionage, subversion, intrusion, and manipulation to try and make the other side do different things and act in certain ways, but stop at war. At the same time, 1957, Kissinger had written Nuclear Weapons and Foreign Policy, which dictated that perpetual limited warfare would be the best way to go, because then you don't end up in a big war. So they kind of combined those things together. By 1967, they knew computing power was coming. And this is why the big race to predict the technologies of the future, because these guys also understood how technology was moving exponentially and how each technological shift caused a new reset. 1967 left us with a neoconservative world. Neoconservative world used early computing, early technology, early statistics, early communication, technological evolutions that we've seen, like ease of TV, video, DVD, all of these things, different ways to make movies, different ways to get information out. They used all of these different things to get to the point where we saw the next reset, which was 90 to 92, the fall of the Soviet Union, this whole thing of hope and change. But in actual fact, at the same time, they're creating a centrist world. They're creating third way politics. Anthony Giddens is writing this up in the 80s. Clinton will say out loud, I'm the first third way politician. They will purge every country on earth, will purge the left of their party down to the bare bone to move it to the center. Every left-wing party will get purged, move it all to the center. Then the right to compete has to move to the center too. You end up with one big blob, two extremes you can paint as weirdos and idiots and extremists that you can fight against really easy and manufacture consent, while you have this big intelligence blob in the center. Yet there's no political solution in the center. All the political solutions are on the left of politics or the right of politics. So it is something that is just a stopgap between a free world of the democracy that we lived in, the idea of a free world, and what will be the overarching technocracy. So that was early 90s that reset happened, and they knew the internet revolution was happening. They were already seeding and training up young global leaders in places like David Shaw, D.E. Shaw in New York, which was the biggest hedge fund in New York at the time, who were creating and training people like Jeff Bezos and Hazley Minor, who would be implanted into Amazon and CNET, which was download.com, and those sort of big sort of platforms. So other different tech leadership programs. At the same time, Edge is really being created by John Brockman and eventually funded by Jeffrey Epstein, which is funding all of the big tech leaders for the future. And by the time you get to 1992, what they do is they're saying, this is a new world. This is now the internet era. And they use it in a different way. They start to understand how to use algorithms. They build algorithms. They're building the technocracy. And the reset we have now, the great reset, is the technocratic panopticon being built around us. So for people who don't know what a panopticon is, Jeremy Bentham in the 1700s said basically you could design a prison, you have one guard in the center, and he is able to see all cells at the same time. So you need one guard, and no one knows if that guard's watching them. They could be watching. It's obscured. So everybody thinks they're being watched. And for that reason, everybody will behave like mutually assured destruction, like those paradigms. They've inserted that into mental behavioral psychology and how to implement that online through algorithms to keep us chained. So they've created the digital technocratic panopticon, where we think we're being watched on all of these different devices all of the time. We know we're being watched on these devices. We know they're keeping masses of data, and they have AI robots going through those data. So we will behave like they want us to behave on the whole. And that's the new reset. That's the great reset. So we've gone through multiple resets, and it's always in line with technology. AI predicts that we have to have a reset now. In the next 5 to 6 years, I don't like quoting these people and what they say, because a lot of it I think is scaremongering and some of it is fantasy mixed in. But Eric Schmidt has said a couple of times, he said in his book he did with Henry Kissinger, the last book Henry Kissinger did, and he said it out loud recently, that humans, in about 5 to 6 years' time, humans will understand things that they know now to be true, but they have no way of explaining. And they will be able to prove those things. For us, we are entering into times where everything is about to turn esoteric, and we're already in the point of 5th generation warfare. So no one really knows what to believe. The next step of technology will dictate the next era, the next state of affairs, and will bring on a new reset. And that reset is obviously exponentially in growth, getting faster and faster. So what they're trying to do is design our society to allow for resets. That means we have no stability and we're not allowed stability. The less stability we have, and the less permanence we have, the more we own, and the more stable we are, the worse for those in power to be able to implement resets. And that's why everybody feels like they're being jolted around all the time, because that will be the state of humankind until humans overthrow the technocratic panopticon, which will happen because everything rises and everything falls. Entropy exists everywhere, including within social orders. That is a fact. They know it to be so too, yet they will try and plan out and look at what comes next afterwards, and already